right, well, broadcasting live from the heart of Qumulo Hill Country. My name is Will Stroh, Principal Support Engineer, and I will be your tour guide today as we set off into the Nexus landscape. Real quick, I also want to give a shout out to a certain customer, hopefully they joined, in Michigan, who's getting married this weekend. Congratulations. I hope you have many long, happy years. And if you, special attendees, have a shout out, birthday wish, or hidden agenda that you want us to know about, feel free to send a message to care@qumulo.com and we'll see about fitting it into the next webinar for you. Now, first up, if you are playing along with the home game and you find you don't have access to Nexus, please reach out in your channel to your friendly CSM and we'll get that situated. Usually it's just a little checkbox somewhere they need to get taken care of and you're good to go. Secondly, and I will mention this again later, if you are in need of something that's not currently covered by Nexus, again, please reach out, let us know. We had a couple requests come in yesterday that are actually already in the pipeline, so it's certainly easy to get those out there. Last but not least, if you are new to Nexus, welcome. If you're old hat at Nexus and you're just here for the alerting aspect of it that we touched on, we'll be reaching that in a little bit here, so either hang tight or go grab a coffee, a drink, whatever, and we'll regroup back around for that guy. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive on in here. So what is Nexus? Bunch of words on the screen tell you what it is. In short, it's single pane of glass into your cluster environment. Now, this can be either on-prem clusters, it can be cloud clusters, AWS, GCP, Azure-based, doesn't much matter. Any one of those will pop up in there. And it really allows for, as we say, they're easy viewing of hardware health, capacity, and so forth. The alerting aspect that we will touch on, that's kind of been the game changer here for a lot of folks, I think, is certainly a key aspect to it and what a lot of people have been waiting for. But, it's also good to keep in mind the other things that you do see out there, like I said, such as the performance side of it and the hardware health. Lastly, as it says, there's no additional cost to this. Every Qumulo owner, I guess, subscriber, however you want to phrase that, you get access to it. It's just there. It's a freebie. The next one will charge you for, I'm sure. So get addicted now while you still can. All right. Nexus requires 602 or higher. If you are one of my favorite customers that's still say on a 5.3 release, you know who you are and you need to upgrade. That's 2 years out of date at this point. If you're using proxies, again, you know who you are. You need to be on 7.0, I think it's 7.01, but that kind of gets rolled into the 7.0 mix there. And then at that point, some magic happens on the back end. You talk through the proxy. I'm not quite sure how all that magic works, and quite frankly, it's above my pay grade, and I don't much care. All I know is that magical stuff happens, and it can talk. Now, by default, right now, we're providing 3 months of performance metrics. That may change in the future. Going out further, I don't know the exact details on that, but right now, that's what you're looking at. Also, you're looking at about a year of capacity history. Now, obviously, if your cluster came online in the past 6 months, you're not going to have a year out there. Don't come crying to us looking for your missing 6 months, because your answer is going to be a big 0 or 6. We will collect data every minute out there. Technically, it's a little quicker than that, but shoot for every minute, which means our charts get updated roughly every 5 minutes. Again, it's a little quicker than that most times. Now, this is not a user configurable option. This is simply just what we pull from the systems out there. So don't be looking to drop this down to every second or anything like that. If you did need something a little more in depth on that one, if you will, or a little more shortened timeline than that minute, certainly you can look at the Qumulo Alerts platform, where it runs basically its own open metrics Grafana database. You could set things up that way. That is an option for you. But if you want something out of the box already working and you're happy with every minute, then we're good to go. As I said early on, if there is anything missing, please, please, please reach out to us via your Slack channel, via email, via cell phone, telephone, if you still use one of those things. The data getting fed into Nexus all comes from the open metrics side of the Qumulo equation, and we're constantly adding things in there. So in that vein, what is out in Nexus today will not be the same stuff that's out there a year from now. I can almost guarantee it. There's going to be more stuff coming out as they add more things into that open metrics monitoring aspect of it. And I neglected to mention early on, if you do have any questions, by all means, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A out there. My good friend Adolfo is keeping an eye on that, and he'll pester me on the side if we see anything. So feel free to drop it out. All right. Nexus itself, if you go to nexus.qumulo.com, I'll give you all a second if you want to type that into your browser there. That will bring you up, once you're logged in, with really what's kind of a vanity page, if you will. It will display all of your clusters that we can talk to on the left-hand side of the screen. So right over here, and give you, total use, total file count, etc. I refer to this as the vanity screen. I forget who told me that, but it's very meaningful in that sense, because this is the screen you want to print out for your CEO or whatever. When they ask, how many files are we saving on that Qumulo box in the corner there? You can say, oh, I got 1.8 billion over there. Sweet. Doesn't take you any time to figure that out. Just go to this website, bing, bang, boom. Additionally, as you take a look around here, we do have, this little hardware button here, which we'll see get on the analytics page. If it's anything other than green, there might be a problem. You might want to look into that guy out there. Likewise, you get a quick viewpoint of ops, throughput, latency, and so forth. So if you see one of these high up and flat line, it might be something worth looking into at that point. As we move through our mix here, here's the analytics screen, and you'll note this looks awfully similar to another screen that's on your Qumulo box. If we had active feedback here, I'd say it looks a lot like your dashboard screen there, and that's probably for good reason. You may want to put a dot and put a tack in that one, and we'll come back to it in a couple months. As you can see here, we have your basic storage overview, data, snapshot, metadata breakdown, all the stuff you'd see on your dashboard normally. There's also this change in use storage out here. If you see this skyrocketing up, might be worth something looking into. Additionally, we do have a little more in-depth on the hardware health here. We got nodes, drive, CPU, and network interfaces. Really, we take a look at these more on the alert side of things, but the TLDR version is if nodes is red, then you're out of node somewhere. Likewise for disks, if a disk is red, then you're down a disk somewhere. You really got to click in on those to see which ones are missing at that point, but that's the general gist of it. CPU temperature is one where we try and focus on what's the bounds of that temperature aspect there, and whether or not that is something that's going to be problematic to your system. Going forward, I know we're looking into getting CPU speeds based in there, and also you'll note the other big one that's missing up there is PSUs. There's a long sorted history on PSU monitoring that's not Qumulo specific. Long and the short of it is once we can put some bounds in there as to which platforms made by certain vendors can handle the polling data from the PSU side, then we can go ahead and get that going up there. So it is coming. I will tell you that much. It's just a matter of when at this point. So don't fret. We will monitor your PSUs once again. Lastly, out there, you do see network interfaces. Right now, this simply checks whether an interface is up or down. So if the cable monster, aka your favorite 7-year-old, goes into your data center and runs behind all the racks and pulls out all the cables, this guy will go red in a heartbeat. And well, at least a minute, I guess. And at that point, you'd click through there and find out what's actually down or missing. What this doesn't currently handle is things such as a quorum storm caused by a flapping network interface. That logic is coming again sooner than later, most likely. But at present, this is very straightforward. Is network interface plugged in? Yes or no? Sort of binary alert, if you will, or statement there. Moving along, we're just going to do a quick overview of what we actually cover here, and then we can hop in and I'll show you some other little tricks in a live demo, because what can go wrong in a live demo? As we go along here, that was the instance overview. Now we're in capacity usage. Very self-explanatory. Here's my capacity, here's my file counts, directory counts, etc. Nothing terribly exciting there. Again, the key points to think about are really twofold, I guess. It's one, do I see something that's out of what I would expect to be the norm? So if you look at just the file and directory counts here, it's hard to make out that little number down there, but I want to say it's probably, that top number is probably about 900 million, that blue line. If I suddenly see that spike up to 2 billion, something happened. And it's really it's a exercise at that point to find out what changed, if you will. In the support side of things, we always ask that question first: what changed? Because by and large, until we include the Skynet Python package to Qumulo, it's not going to be creating things on its own. And so, from that perspective, if you do see a large directory or a file count increase there, something happened, and probably some user did it. It's most likely the way to look at it. So again, these are helpful suggestions, if you will, as to where to find things. It will not be hard and fast as, we can tell you what day it took place, but beyond that, it is going to require some investigation on your side. Same holds true with the performance metrics tab. This is specific to this node here, again, as we've delved into the node. We have this IOPS jump here at, what is this? I don't know, 10, 20 or so. Is this a problem? Is the first question you should ask. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But secondly, if we saw a bunch of users have issues at this time frame, well, we can go in and take an investigative look at that point. What that means from the cluster side is delving into, do we see other things that may have been taking place there? Perhaps you have a bunch of snapshots that are queued up to be deleted at 10:20 every day. And so, did that put a damper on some actual traffic gain through? Did it get paused up there? Did it get held up? Did you have a domain controller that went out to lunch at that time? Did someone install, I don't know, CrowdStrike or something that it would never cause any issues? So I guess that's a misnomer there. But certainly, it's a case of, again, going in and asking what took place, what happened, and what changed here. Now, again, as we said, this is point in time here. Right now, we're set to 4 hours, and we'll see here in a second, dragging that out some. But, given a simple 4-hour window, there's not a whole lot I can deduce from that. So as you are looking into monitoring your system with the Nexus client here, if you will, it's good to understand what quote unquote normal or typical system performance is in your case versus simply eyeing the high watermarks and then getting, having a concern caused by those. All righty. Pardon me. As we move along, the last one we have out there, which should be present on all your Nexus instances, is going to be the alert or the event tab. Forgive me. With the event tab, we are going to we're going to be monitoring on those things that we call out early on, such as nodes, drives, CPU temperature, and the other fellow, the network interface. We also monitor things like the system being upgraded out there. Now, as I said, as things get added into the open metric side of things, expect more and more events and alerts to be pushed out here. So what you see here right now, again, isn't going to be what you see here in a year's time. Now, the next little bit here. Well, let me back up for a second. I will say also you can click on this little arrow over here, which we'll see in the live demo, where it does give you more information. We attempt to, if something were to go offline or a drive failed or whatnot, we do attempt to make some suggestions out there for things you can check and go look at. Obviously, those are, they're grounded in as much information as we have provided to us at that point. So it's not gospel by any stretch, but it is worth looking at and seeing if there's, it's the low-hanging fruit, if you will, on that front. Alrighty. So let's go to alerting real quick. We're going to jump around some here because events go hand in hand with alerting. And this is, I think, what a lot of folks are showing up for today. So alerting is accessed currently through the user settings menu, and it's turned off by default. So let's just take a look at that. Woo. Let's go over here. So what you would do is come up over here in your upper right-hand corner. And at that point, you'd come down here to manage accounts, or I'm sorry, user settings, one of these. My alerts are enabled, so let's just go ahead and disable these real quick. Alrighty. So this is what you should be presented with in your case, where you'd see a little screen here, email alerts are disabled, give your own email address down there at that point. Click on enable alerts, not a lot to it. Then you can scroll through here and see what you want to get email alerts on. Capacity exceeding, that's currently hard-coded to 95%. That is going to change at some point here in the very near future. 95 seems to be a number that a lot of customers like to focus on. With the Qumulo, except in extremely rare situations, you can run that thing straight up to 100% and it'll continue to work perfectly fine, with the exception of once you hit 100%, it goes into a read-only state at that point. Outside of that, you can run that at 100% all day. So we do want to let customers change that around. We have had customers in the past who like to run things at 98, 99%, and 95 would kick you out an alert every time you went up and down on that guy. So we do want to get that to a user configurable option, if you will. Connectivity to Nexus, really, if you change something on the firewall or whatnot, you will lose connectivity at that point. It's the same port 443, hitting the API out there. If you're not getting regular cloud monitoring, you're probably not getting Nexus monitoring at that point. Again, if this pops up more, often on your system, please reach out to us. We can see what's going on at that point. As I said, we got a lot of hardware events. If I don't want to be notified for node offline, I just flip the button back the other way. It goes all a little white and gray on me here. We got node offline, drives, not good. Network interface up and down. This network interface up and down one, well, really any of these, I guess, due to the window we have for the query out there, if you were to be in a point where you had a drive go unhealthy and then healthy within a minute time period, within that polling window, I guess, that probably wouldn't get caught by Nexus at that point if it's within that polling window. The odds of that happening are slim to none on a quote-unquote realistic issue. Likewise, with things like network interfaces going up and down, where those can cause quorum storms out there with the network just constantly readdressing itself. Those take place those typically take place within a normal polling period. However, they will stretch out outside of that minute window, if you will. So a lot of these, from a pure support perspective, I would fully expect any of these that are saying alerts on to be perfectly fine as within that polling window out there. Last one out there we have is software being upgraded, which is nice just to know for the history of the cluster. We oftentimes in support will have someone say, "Oh, I did something back in April. I want to say I upgraded my cluster," and right now it's a case of we can look through the Slack channels and see that it was actually June that they upgraded, and not April. Or we can go back through, any messages that we get from the MQ monitoring that currently takes place as well. Having this here is great because it lets everyone be on the same page. So that's really where things are at there. Now, we did skip over this alerts from character here. This is in regarding to the clusters I want to monitor. Now, you'll note, as we mentioned earlier here, this is coming to me, straight over to me. So this is tied into my user instance here. If, for example, I don't care about GCP clusters, I can just check that guy there. And I think that's the only GCP one. Looks like it. At which point I hit save changes out here. Bing, bang, boom. I'm getting 13 out of 14 of these clusters. Great. If you have, depending on how your Nexus is set up for your company, if you have multiple business units, if I have an LA office, for example, and a UK office, and let's say the LA guys don't care about what happens in the UK and vice versa, at that point you can go in there, disable them for the UK ones, if you will, or the LA ones. That's really up to you and how you want to work that. Additionally, if I am here and let's say I'm an intern, for example, and all I care about is one or two of these, or maybe I only care about my test one, this move test here. At that point, you can just select that guy out there. There is a question in the Q&A chamber there. Can you enable alerts to be sent to a different email address versus the end user? At present, you can't. It is going to come into whatever email address is set up here. If you were to set that to a distribution list, then you could do some additional parsing on the inside, on the end portion of that. It's not a great solution. It's the first one that comes to mind there, though. But that would be my answer to that for the immediacy. Whether or not that is something that's coming down the pipe, I don't honestly know. Typically with things like this, we like to see them tied just to the account in question. So if you did want it, if you did want it going to a distribution list, at that point, you really want to log in as that distribution list as opposed to as yourself. I see another question up here. Are there plans to have Nexus replace Qumulo Alerts on-prem servers? Currently use Qumulo Alerts Docker for email alerts for various changes, share changes, user prem changes, and so forth. That one I am going to dance around. I appreciate the question. So there's a couple different things going on there. As far as I know, Qumulo Alerts will maintain being a separate monitoring platform, if you will. Where you get into things such as share changes and user permission changes. So user permission changes, that typically gets rolled into an audit log. And so I don't know that would ever get actually monitored by Qumulo Nexus at this point. That may be something in the pipeline, but I can't vouch for that one way or the other. Things such as shares and share name changes. One thing we have looked at, and I'm gonna avoid the share name changes here because again, that's kind of in the audit log. But anything with share names, let me go down that road. Anything with share names, that becomes end user data at that point, and to display that inside of this little S3 rigmarole here, that does get to be a dicey topic. So, one thing we have had in the past is customers have asked for such as quota monitoring. And quota monitoring per directory is going to have directory names out there. So, if I pull up if I pull up my Nexus installation or Nexus instance, and I suddenly see share names for things that aren't under my purview, that becomes a security problem real quick. So I know things like the quotas have been mentioned, and that is being actively pursued. It's just a question of how they're going to handle that out there. So I wouldn't completely say that any of that is off the board. I just don't know when at this point. And so I would say if Qumulo Alerts is working for you, I would continue to use that, possibly in conjunction with Nexus, and go down that road. And then, as Nexus matures and grows, at this point, I think I mentioned in one of these slides here, engineering puts out updates to this about twice a week, is my understanding. And so from that perspective, as this grows here, it may reach a point where you can simply disable your Qumulo Alerts Docker instance there. But if that's something you rely on at this point, I would continue to go with it and reach out to your CSM or CSE in the Slack channel and say, hey, you know what? We like Nexus. We think it's great. It's awesome that we don't have to configure anything for it. How soon can we get X, Y, Z? And go down that road. That would be my suggestion there. I see another question out here. Is there a way to set figures to alert on? For example, can I configure it? Yes. So you're asking, can I configure it to alert me when capacity hits 80% or perhaps a certain amount of data? So yes, in one of the, I won't say next releases, but near-term releases, this capacity exceeding value does become a user configurable option. And so that would certainly address that. The final one is actually an interesting, or I guess is certain total amount of data. I took that as like a file count, which would actually be an interesting one to look into. I don't know the odds of that. It seems like it should be fairly straightforward in so much as it's, we do have file counts here. If we come back over here, if I want an alert to go off when I hit 900,000 files, maybe that's something to look into there. I'm not sure the usability of that per se, the more I think about it, but it would be an interesting thing more than anything else. Kind of give you a goal to strive for, right? You get a badge at that point. Maybe that's what we actually need on Nexus, is little badges for all the customers. All right, and we got another question out here. Will the hardware health be expanded to include other items, power supplies, for example? Yes, absolutely. We're actively working on adding power supplies into that. That is a big one. If you want to know the dirty little backstory here, we used to alert on power supplies all the time. And we ran into a case where the polling of the power supplies themselves was such that you get into a situation where the system would register both power supplies as not having power, and yet it would still be operational. Now, if you think about that statement for less than a minute, you can figure out real quick that's not a feasible situation to be in. And so we ended up getting a lot of false positives off that. And so we ended up putting we nipped that one and put a halt to actually send out power supply alerts for those sorts of things. Upon investigation, we found that it's really situated to a subset of platforms. And so what we're working with right now is, you basically have two options. Wait till those platforms expire and move out of support, or you can do a software fix around it on the Nexus side. We're opting for the latter because a lot of those platforms are good until like 2028 or something like that. In which case it'll be a case where it's, it will, if you were to have, say, an all flash platform, which is not susceptible to that, that would show your hardware health out here for power supplies. Whereas if you were on a platform that does get it, then we'd probably flash it up there. Either it wouldn't show, or we'd put a banner up there that says, "Hey, don't don't trust this thing or something like that. I don't have the specifics on that. That's going to be going through UX design and all that jive. But yes, the long-winded answer to your question, yes, hardware power supply unit monitoring is coming down the pike. Alrighty. We had another question pop up here. What ports are used for local nodes to send data to Nexus? It's the same as our other ones. It is port 443 out there. If you look at if you log into your cluster, just SSH into one of the nodes and do a sudo QQ monitoring _conf, you'll see it out there. It's going to be api.nexus.com, I want to say it is, but I don't quote me on that one. And that'll give you the host you're going to, and it'll say port 443. That is in any system. I want to say since 6.0, we added that in there, so it started populating data as it could before Nexus actually went live even. So you will have a lot of historical data out here that you would that you'll see out there. Okay. So if we jump back over here, I'm just going to focus on this one real quick, and then I'll just type through the other two in live demo form. As we've seen, alerts exist for all this stuff currently. There's our 95% utilization. The next changes coming down the pipe, I've been told. Network interface flapping. This is going to be your quorum storm events being caused by a network if you have a NIC that's going online and offline. Again, just being the transparent support engineer that I am, the problem has always been from a cluster perspective, and I apologize to those of you who have heard me do this rant in person live before. From a cluster perspective, a quorum storm is an absolutely perfectly fine thing. The interface goes offline, we cause a quorum event, it comes back online, we cause a quorum event. That's great. That's how it's supposed to work. Life is good. Unfortunately, end users see that much differently. Every time we cause a quorum event, we'll end up in a situation where IO can get paused briefly while it gets buffered and wait for the cluster to reform itself. So end users will actually see that as typically an outage at that point. And as storage administrators, the last thing we want is angry users. So that really, it's semantics, but for all intents and purposes, it's an outage at that point. So you really don't want quorum storms happening. So the problem comes down to how do you field that appropriately? Do I just automatically offline an interface? Do I just send email alerts out? What do I do? There's a lot of different ways you can handle it, and there's usually one or two right ways to handle it. So from a Nexus perspective, we're going to do the alerting portion of it because, again, we don't like to automatically do things we don't have to. But that will be something that is coming down there. As I said, with the capacity thresholds, getting those set out there. So if you are one of those people who like to run your cluster at 99%, great. Set that storage capacity to 99.9. And when it hits that, well, you gotta do something. Lastly, there's addition of maintenance windows come out there. So if you are doing something where it's going to be a long-running process. For example, I was helping a customer back in December where we had to go through, update things on a node, bring it back into quorum. While that node was out for that 10-minute period, they had so many writes coming in there that our restriper actually took upwards of an hour to run per node. Now, it's not great by any stretch as far as waiting for restriper to run, but it's neat. Doing the right thing. The bigger problem comes down to when the node count was actually 35 nodes. So you can kind of do the math there real quick, and they would have 35 hours of getting constant alerts saying node down, node offline, node out of quorum, however we're handling things. So the ability to put a maintenance window out there and just mute those alerts during that period works out a lot. A lot of customers don't see it, but on the support side, we when you guys do reach out to us and say, "Oh, we're doing maintenance on Tuesday night at 8 p.m.," we'll actually put a reminder on our calendar saying, hey, customer XYZ is doing this stuff, just for awareness at that point. But also from an end user perspective, you can go out there and set the maintenance window at that point and not have to worry about it. All right, so there's some slide stuff about the alerting that we kind of went through. But let's just jump back over here to our, again, nothing can go wrong live demo. As you saw here, we got latency, throughput, IOPS, whatnot. Little bars go across here. Cool. As we delve in here, what you will notice is this is last 24 hours. Again, just like your dashboard in the GUI. As we delve in here, we got capacity usage. You now have this little drop down up here on the right side. Let's just see what we got here for 3 months time out here. Not a lot of change, a little bit of change. And you can scroll back and see where you're at. Again, this all comes down to how am I concerned, and if so, when did it take place? If I expect this to be a flat line, obviously this is not a flat line. And so at that point, I've added 28 terabytes of data over the last 3 months. Is this a problem? Maybe, maybe not. If it's expected, then great, go with it. If it's not expected, then at that point, bears investigation. Flipping over to the performance side of things, a couple things to keep in mind here. One, by default, we're shooting the last 4 hours. Two, if you do like the little breakdowns, on this cluster, all we got, no, we don't have SMB on this one. We do have, this is an NFS only cluster. Well, I take that back. It also is FTP, if that's still a protocol of choice. But you will see the breakdown of these protocols. So your API protocol here is under the REST, NFS, what's it doing? Replication also, which I don't think it's shown anywhere right now. So that's kind of nice, actually, because you can narrow down the windows on that one. Same holds true for throughput and latency. Again, you just click this little guy here, bing, bang, boom, get the breakdown. Now, what you'll note is let me just hide these to make it a little more viewable. As we have this set to, if we do it to last hour, for example, keep an eye on this bottom axis here. Here we're showing you every minute as it comes over and that data comes in, where things are at. If we flip this out to, say, last 12 hours, then at this point, you're still doing every minute out there. It's getting a little smaller. Crank this guy out to, I don't know, last month. Let's see how that loads up. In this case, really now our scale is basically every hour at that point. So as you go further back in the past, that scale is going to change. It's something to keep in mind and be made aware of. If you need more in-depth historical data than that, if I need to know exactly what was happening at 2 p.m. on January 25th, I guess we'll say 2:30 p.m. on January 25th, since it's every hour here. That may be something that we need to go in other ways at that point. The Nexus chart for that may be not the appropriate method. Alrighty. We looked at event side here, so I'm just going to go straight up here to the download one. Again, a lot of you guys have probably seen this in the past. If you haven't, well, welcome to it. This will be your upgrade paths out there, or it does show you the upgrade path out there. The stuff that's over here is really just the latest releases we have on the left-hand side. Really what you want is, if you're doing an upgrade, is go ahead and take a look here where we do this drop down on my from version. So let's say we're coming from, I don't know, 610. And I want the latest and greatest out here. Just came out yesterday. Awesome. Click on view upgrade path. This is going to give me the 5 hops I need to get from 610 to 714. So first off, you got to do a platform update to the quarterly release of 620 or 6201. Platform release here. Instant upgrade to this guy. hitting this quarterly release, and finally this non-quarterly release just every, I think it's a bi-weekly release schedule at this point. So that's very helpful for getting those in. You just click on this download link here. It'll say, cool, I'm doing this. And as you can see, it's starting to drop it down right here. Awesome. I'll actually cancel that so I don't eat up my bandwidth. All right. Now, if you were on a cloud platform that's not the Azure native Qumulo, as that's handled by Qumulo itself, you would obviously click on go to cloud releases at that point. Not a whole lot of difference between the two. The upgrade schedule is likely going to be the same. In this case, it is. There have been one or two instances where it's not the same, but by and large, just make sure you're on the right one there. Lastly, up here, we do have this little support thing here. If you have any questions, this does get tied to, the channel that I'm in here. In this case, Qumulo Engineering. If I have news about announcements and releases, go to Qumulo Announcements. Mandy Evans will be posting stuff out there. It's great to go to. If you're not in it, I highly recommend it. She's super nice. Be nice to her. If you're not, I'll hear about it. You won't get a Christmas present. In other ways, obviously going to open cases, email, get phone support, et cetera, et cetera. So, straightforward stuff there. Nothing really amazing or not. Okay. Lastly, out here, I think that's it. Is that actually it? Oh, here's what actually it looks like when it sends you a mail on it. Figured this might be entertaining to someone. You will want to make sure this Nexus notifications is opened up as an email that can get through and not go into your spam junk box. And so in this case, the cluster is going to be my instance here, which in this case is called Music, on July 16th at 5:02 UTC. I have no idea what real time that is. We had a network interface, went offline on node 4. Is this a concern to me? Well, this one's not because I'm the one who did it. But if this is, again, unexpected, then it's something to look into. Just doing some brief testing on seeing how fast these came through. It took about 2.5 minutes for it to show up in my inbox. And then I got distracted by shiny objects and then came back to it, 5 minutes later. So it's pretty quick on the uptake there. All right. Before we get to the Q&A session here, I see we've got about 4 questions out there. I do want to throw out there that next month we are going back to school with Professor Q. So we will be covering a lot of QQ, CLI stuff there, tips, tricks, little, hidden things that the support team uses from time to time. So if that is of interest to you, I highly recommend you show up to that guy. Popping over to the Q&A side of the house, let's take a look here. I'm not sure if I missed this, but with trends going away, will the functionality, graphing capacity over time, be added to Nexus? So we do have let me exit out of this guy. Let's grab, this guy again. He's a good one. So we do have this capacity graphing here. What we don't currently have is extrapolating out from that and giving an estimate of where you'll be 6 months down the road in using that current set of data. My understanding is that is coming, the forecasting portion of it. But at present, it doesn't exist. I mean, really what you'd have to do is drop this guy out. I don't know. Let's see what happened the last year here. Hopefully it doesn't break. So this guy came on board here, middle of January, it looks like, or I guess end of February. At this point, we had 70 terabytes available. As I come up here, I'm down to 33 terabytes available. So over a 6-month period, rough numbers, I use 30 terabytes. Do the math at that point. Like I said, forecasting is coming down the pipe. It's just not here presently. So if that is something you're interested in, this would be the way of going about it right now. Alrighty. Is there some way to test and get an example email alert after enabling them? You read my mind, user. Yes, there is. It's coming. It's not there right now. It is going to be here sooner than later, if you will. What I have asked is when you go out to the alert side of things, let's bring it up here, is there actually will be a little button out here that says like test alerts. So that is coming. It was not, there was some forces outside of Qumulo that forced us to bring this live sooner than Trends goes offline. So we do have some overlap time in there. And in doing that, it was really a case of, okay, what do we absolutely need to get out the door versus what are super nice to have. So like I said, that will be coming here very shortly. It's just didn't hit this first cut here. Okay. Oh, we got a follow-up here. It might be helpful to, this is in regards to the capacity portion. Sorry, I see there's a way to change it now. It might be helpful to be able to change the graph a little. When I look at mine, it looks pretty flat over time, whereas in trends, you can see the change is a little better. That is really going to be if this drop down here. I don't know what your time scale is. I don't want to bring up your cluster on live webinar because that would be bad, among other things. So I would say go ahead and reach out in your Slack channel and we can take a look at it and see exactly what you're talking about there. All right. Another question. What is the default alert trigger interval in hours? E.g., if a node goes down, an alert is triggered, but if the issue is not resolved within a few hours, will the alert continue to be sent? Is there notification criteria that repeats notifications every X hours or X minutes? My understanding is that present, you will get that initial notification of the node going offline. And I'm actually going to, instead of guessing at this, we are greeted today by the project manager of Qumulo, Mr. Juan. I will kick it over to him actually on whether or not that continues to send alerts out or not. Please
Hey, would you mind repeating that question really quickly?
Yeah, absolutely, Juan. The question was in regards to nodes going offline. If an alert is triggered, do we continue to send alerts regarding that, such as you send the initial alerts? Okay.
Yeah. So what will happen is we'll notice that the node went offline, and we'll send out an alert within, I think it's like 3 or 4, let's say 4 or 5 minutes, fairly quickly. And once we notice the node coming back online, we'll generate another event, which if you're subscribed, you'll get an alert from that. But we won't send multiple alerts for the same event. Now, if the node happened to go offline, back online, back offline, back online, within consecutive minutes, you'll get 4 alerts at that point.
Thank you, Juan. And the other half of that question, is there a way to suppress alerts during maintenance? That will come down to the maintenance window aspect I touched briefly on. That's in the next development cycle here, where you will be able to set a maintenance window out there and say during period from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., don't send me any alerts. Don't use that as a method of simply not getting alerts on your cluster. If you just don't want alerts, go disable them. Don't just constantly set maintenance windows. That'd be rude. All righty. Any other questions out there? I know we kind of covered a lot today. I will say if something strikes you, 20 minutes later, 2 hours later, feel free to reach out in the Slack channel. I won't be here. I'll be at a dentist appointment. But certainly one of my other cohorts will be more than happy. The Johnny Carsons to my Ed McMahon. They'll be happy to answer any questions you have about Nexus and or alerting out there. As we opened with, if you do have things that are not currently either alerted on or not showing, you'd like some sort of parity with what you had with trends, you want something out there, by all means, reach out in the channel, get it out there, and let us know what it is. For the most part, everything that folks were using did get transformed over, I guess that'd be the way of saying it. So, I would say we're pretty good on that front, but certainly if you did have some weird graph that you need or or if the storage capacity, you need to delve into that to little micro increments. Reach out, and we can certainly cover that for you. Oh, we had oh, I see all these questions coming in and then getting answered immediately.
Sorry, I typed in the answer. The question was, can we repeat the QQ command that shows you the configuration of the monitoring?
Oh, excellent. Yeah, that's QQ or sudo QQ monitoring underscore conf. That will give you the locations that it's going to. And one last straggler of a question here: is it possible to extend the performance metrics from 3 to 6 to 9 months? Juan, I would kick that one back over to you again, since you're going to have insight into that guy. Is it possible to drag out performance to 9-month time period?
Not at the moment. Extending performance metrics is something that we're considering, but we haven't made any decisions to extend it beyond the current set amount.
All righty. Much appreciated.
That being said, if you are interested in storing your performance metrics essentially forever, you could configure the open metrics output to your own Grafana instance. We do have ways of doing that, and you can just store that locally for as long as you want. That is possible today.
Thank you, Joe. If you do have questions regarding setting up that Grafana instance, again, it would be something to just reach out in your Slack channel. We are happy to assist in that in any way we can. So feel free to do that. All righty. I'm going to head and close things down here. I've rattled my gums for quite enough time. And as always, if you see any talking dogs, be sure to feed them tacos. All right, folks. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next month. Back to school, Professor Q. Have a good one.